Michael Joseph Jackson was born in Indiana to a working-class family. He and his 9 other siblings lived in a 2-bedroom home. He and his siblings formed a band called the Jackson Brothers, later renamed to the Jackson 5, when Michael was only 6 years old. His father was a harsh man and routinely harmed Michael physically and emotionally. Eventually, the family began touring and they permanently relocated to Los Angeles. They garnered a good amount of success, enough that they were considered, quote, a cutting-edge example of black crossover artists. Crossover artists means they appealed to both black and white audiences, a rarity at the time. Eventually, as the siblings got older, they moved on to solo careers, and Michael moved to New York. He garnered massive success, and when Thriller came out in 1983, it was the best-selling album in the world, and remains so today. There were many controversies that Jackson was involved in throughout his decades of being one of the most celebrated artists ever. In the mid to late 80s, people started to notice that Michael's skin was getting much lighter, and tabloids accused him of bleaching his skin. But his dermatologist had diagnosed him with vitiligo and lupus, which are both skin conditions. The vitiligo was a large contributor to the lightened skin, as it's a melanin condition where patches of the skin grow lighter, and it is likely that Michael had used bleaching makeup to even out his skin tone. You can't control vitiligo, and it can spread throughout the whole body sometimes. With the light makeup that Michael applied, his skin could appear very pale. The singer always said he never purposely bleached his skin. Quote, "When people make up stories that I don't know who I am, it hurts me." Despite stating multiple times that he doesn't bleach his skin, the media ran with it, and to this day, people still believe that he intentionally tried to make himself appear white. It didn't help that Michael did lie about the cosmetic surgeries he's had. Although he admitted to having 2 nose jobs and a cleft chin surgery, Michael Jackson's mother admitted that she feared he had become addicted to getting plastic surgery on top of his habits of dropping massive amounts of weight in unhealthy manners. That being said, the singer was always eccentric. He had a pet monkey named Bubbles that he would take with him on tour. He once brought a llama into the studio while writing a duet with Queen, and that ended up souring their relationship. In 1987, the Rolling Stone described Jackson as, quote, "the flighty genius star child, a celebrity virtually all of his life who dwells in the fairy tale kingdom of fellow celebrities, animals, mannequins, and cartoons, who provides endless fodder for the tabloids." But it's the same child in Michael who inspires the artistry that fuels all the subsidiary industries, who turns his primal fears and fantasies into wondrous, hyperkinetic, and emotional music. Maybe it's due to the harm he experienced as a or because fame and attention is all he's ever known, but it doesn't really matter because the outcome was the same. And Michael's fixation on the maintenance of a childlike personality well into his 30s and 40s led to him being accused in 1993 and again later in the 2000s of the charges that he is now known for. His own sister, LaToya, accused him of it as well, although she did later retract the statement. The charges, whether true or false, were dropped with a settlement outside of court for $23 million. If they aren't true, then Jackson's claims that he is of a father wanting to extort money from the close relationship his son had with the singer were true. But even if that may be, I can't really see any reason why someone in their middle age would even have a close relationship with a child that isn't their kin. All of these allegations occurred in 1993, a few months after Michael's Super Bowl halftime show. Pivoting towards a much lighter topic, we are going to discuss how the halftime show performance he did was the beginning of the performances we now know today. The theatrics we see and will see this year with Eminem, Mary J. Blige, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre are all owed to Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show performance that sparked the frenzy around the event. Prior to Jackson's performance, the halftime show was regarded as a last-minute filler space. It allowed the teams to recover some stamina from the first 2 quarters of the game and was just meant to keep the crowd's attention while they waited for the 3rd quarter to begin. Typically, marching bands or older, past celebrities would play a few songs, and it generally wasn't very exciting. Without Michael Jackson's performance, it's very likely that the halftime show would now just be a space for commercials, and people would probably switch to the other channel while they wait for the football game to continue. It certainly wouldn't be the event that sometimes garners more viewers than the game itself. To fully understand how Michael Jackson changed the game, we need to look at the 1992 Super Bowl, which occurred a year prior. The halftime performers were a marching band playing an ode to the Winter Olympics, and it was really boring to say the least. It was so boring, in fact, that Fox decided to air an episode of a comedy sketch show at the same time as the halftime show in an attempt to lure the audience away from the game and to their network. And it totally worked. People switched to the comedy show, and a lot of the people didn't even finish watching the football game. Well, the network airing the Super Bowl was really upset, and the idea was born to turn the halftime show into a pop music spectacle. Now, interestingly, the NFL has a policy wherein they don't pay their performers to appear in the event, a policy that remains in place today. Because of that, it was very difficult for the management to even get Michael to perform. He only agreed to do so when Frito-Lay, the chip company, and the NFL agreed to donate $100,000 to Jackson's charity and give him commercial space to air a charity promotion instead. When Michael performed, it did exactly what the network hoped it would do, and ratings actually increased during his performance. The event was so massive. It featured the singer appearing on top of 2 jumbotrons before he catapulted onto center stage. He then stands still and silent for 2 minutes. 2 whole minutes before giving the performance that credited him with causing the largest television tune-in in the United States. He did his famous moonwalk, combined his most beloved music, and ended his performance with a choir of 3,500 Los Angeles area children singing his song "We Are the World." Every Super Bowl halftime show performer since then owes their publicity to Michael, who popularized and created the fanfare that we know to be around the event today. Every single halftime show since then has been compared to Michael's monumental performance. Despite it being the first of a long list of massive performer appearances since then, many still regard it as the best. Even this year, for the 2022 halftime show, wherein we are set to watch some of the biggest rap and hip-hop performers take the stage, don't be surprised if you see it being compared to Michael's. The man may have had plenty of personal controversies and trials, but he is one of the greatest performers of all time. Who else can stand completely still, in total silence, for 2 uninterrupted minutes, and still have the crowd going absolutely ballistic? He is the man who bridged a lot of the gap between black and white audiences during a time when it was certainly much more controversial to do so. To this day, the halftime show is one of the most watched events every year, and it's commonplace for many non-football fans to tune in just to watch the event, and that's all thanks to the king of pop and his worldwide influence. Janet Jackson was born into the infamous Jackson family in Indiana, where her father was almost entirely withdrawn from her life. He focused solely on her brother Michael and the success of the Jackson 5. Being the youngest of 10 children, she was largely ignored and was told to refer to her father only by his first name. She got her start in sitcom television before her father let her into the studio, and she released 2 bubblegum pop records stylistically similar to the Jackson 5. After her second album, she broke away from her family to make it on her own. Upon leaving the family, Janet changed her lyrical style into one that more closely resembles her music today. It was risky and had tons of crossover appeal. Through her own work, Janet shot to stardom, completely separate from her brother Michael's success. As her career progressed and her fame rose, Janet became known for her provocative music. She sang and wrote about taking charge as a woman, and some of her hit songs, like Nasty, were about standing her ground and allowing her sexuality to not be a shameful part of her womanhood. Her style was eccentric and had mass appeal from both black and white communities, much like her brother Michael. Now let's fast forward to the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show and set the scene for the infamous performance. Janet was the first singer on stage. She did her set, it went great. Then Nelly and his crew sang about it being hot and telling women to take their clothes off, all while cheerleaders are provocatively dancing around him. Then P. Diddy performs, it's all going great, and then the finale happens where Janet Jackson comes back to send off the performance, and in the final moments of the show, Justin Timberlake comes onto the stage and together they perform Timberlake's hit song, Rock Your Body. The final line of the song says, quote, "That'll have you naked by the end of this song." Then, as he's singing that final line, the 2 performers move close together and Timberlake rips Janet's shirt and exposes her breast to a crowd of millions of people. This moment, where her breast was on display for about half a second, sparked a wildfire that would remain with Jackson to this very day. The cultural impact of this moment was a lot larger than I initially thought too. The founder of YouTube even stated that he started the video platform because of the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, and he noticed that people wanted to rewatch the video to see what happened, but had no way to do so because there was no video platform to view it on. The moment sparked an international debate about how families wanted to watch the Super Bowl without being exposed to lewd content. It's fine though when P. Diddy is telling women to take their clothes off, that's no problem. But oh my god, there was a real human for half a second on TV. It was so big that the White House issued a statement on it, the FBI was investigating it, and the FCC launched an investigation against CBS to see if they were in on it as some sort of publicity stunt. Janet herself in interviews stated that it was a stunt, but that it went way too far, and her whole breast was not meant to be exposed. Janet stated that what was supposed to happen is Timberlake rips off her shirt, but there was also supposed to be like a bra shirt thing underneath, and was going to be this whole provocative Janet Jackson style teasing thing that she did. Not a lot of people believe this though, and thus Nipplegate was born, a conspiracy theory that the whole thing was planned. The FCC chairman himself stated that, quote, "Clearly somebody had knowledge of it. Clearly it's something that was planned by someone. She probably got what she was looking for," which refers specifically to Janet Jackson and completely ignores Timberlake's involvement in the stunt. The FCC fined CBS, the company that aired the Super Bowl, $500,000, and this enraged the CEO of CBS so much so that he became solely intent on blacklisting Janet and destroying her career. She wasn't allowed on MTV, VH1, she was wiped from all CBS-owned radio stations, which was a much bigger deal in 2004 than it would be today. She was almost entirely destroyed by the blacklist, and despite her new album being received positively, it failed to reach any chart success. Now, in regards to whether or not it was planned, it's to this day pretty much impossible to get a clear answer. But whether or not it was planned doesn't really matter, because even if it was, certainly there was absolutely no way that Janet expected her career to tank the way it did. So much so that she never fully recovered from it. The whole incident also almost entirely ignores Justin Timberlake's role in the supposed stunt. Despite him being the one to rip the breast cup off, he was never blamed for the incident, let alone suffered from it. A New York Times article reported it as, quote, Janet Jackson flashed one breast in front of the largest television audience of the year in the Super Bowl halftime show. It entirely omits Timberlake's role in the incident, and as far as the media is concerned, he had no role at all. It implies that Janet was the sole agent, that she was the one to expose herself. It entirely forgets that Timberlake was the one to rip her shirt. Janet herself said that all of the emphasis and media attention was on her and that Justin wasn't blamed at all. Now, after all of Janet's apologies and shame, where she became literally the most searched thing on the internet, and that's not a hyperbole, the exposing incident involving Janet is the most searched thing ever. If we fast forward past the incident, past the initial outraged reaction of the media, Janet slowly starts to retreat into private life. She is forever damaged by the incident, and despite releasing music, she's largely maintained a shroud of mystery. Fast forward again to early 2021 when the Britney Spears documentary is released about her conservatorship. Justin is mentioned in the doc as someone who was more so a witness who did nothing to help Spears as she was pulled into the controlling legal agreement. In response to the documentary, he tweeted, quote, I am deeply sorry for the times in my life where my actions contributed to the problem, where I spoke out of turn or did nothing to speak up for what was right. I understand that I fell short in these moments and many others and benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism. I specifically want to apologize to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson both individually, because I care for and respect these women and I know I failed. And now in 2022, a two-part documentary about Janet Jackson's life was released that has finally brought her own opinion to the forefront. She said exactly what I've been thinking this entire time, that the whole thing was blown way out of proportion. No one cared when women were dancing in bikinis or men were singing about naked women, so why is a breast such an insanely big deal that led to the destruction of an incredibly talented woman's career? While relaying the incident, Janet had no ill thoughts towards Timberlake. In fact, she advised him to stay silent so his career wouldn't suffer either. She took the blame, and in a phone call to Timberlake after the accident, Janet recalls saying, quote, listen, I don't want any drama for you. They focused all this on me, so I said if I were you, I wouldn't say anything. 1 decade after the incident in 2014, the FCC chairman admitted that the whole thing was blown way out of proportion, and he stated, quote, in reality, if you slow the thing down, it's Justin ripping off her breastplate. Which, while I'm happy to know there's someone sane in the FCC who acknowledges how stupid the whole thing is, even if it is 10 years later, you really don't need to slow down the footage to know that Justin Timberlake was the one who ripped her shirt open. It's not like they needed extra footage or to analyze or hack the system to see this. It's a half-baked non-apology that destroyed the woman's career. To this day, CBS has not apologized or made any mention of the incident, even though the Super Bowl invited Janet back to perform, to which she declined.
Being fairly new to the industry, Jafar is best known for being a child of Jackson 5's Jermaine Jackson and the nephew of Michael Jackson himself. Alongside this, Jafar's music career has gained a bit of buzz lately, perfectly aligned with the announcement of what could potentially be the biggest career move he'll ever see. But who exactly is Jafar, and why haven't we heard of him much before now? Keep watching to find out. But first, did you know of Jafar before he was announced to play the titular role in Michael's biopic? If not, do you think he's the perfect person to portray his late uncle now? Share your response in the comments and let's jump right in. According to IMDb, Jafar is a rising singer, entertainer, and songwriter. He was born in Los Angeles as second youngest son of the legendary singer, songwriter, and producer Jermaine Jackson, as well as the nephew of the iconic King of Pop MJ. As a young kid, Jafar aspired to one day become a professional golfer. However, being surrounded surrounded by a family of legendary entertainers in Encino, California his whole life, it only made sense that Jafar soon followed in their iconic footsteps. The Jackson Bunch notably hosts the most powerful and prominent musical influencers around the globe. Because of this and so much more, Jafar has a naturally amazing and eccentric taste in music. Doubled from listening to film scores, Jafar utilizes a lot of his time to showcase his vast variety of selections, from Marvin Gaye and Sam Cooke to Johnny Mathis and Nat Cole. The start of Jafar's career began when he was 12 years old. As a notable talent on his own, Jafar is well versed in piano playing and has gradually developed a handful of techniques as well as rich knowledge of artistry and music. He's known to be a creative spirit who tends to share his love for the arts in other forms like traveling, drawing, and his sweet passion for fashion. Besides America, Jafar's favorite places to travel include Austria and Hong Kong, owing it all to the shops, landscaping, and good energy of these places as to why he holds them so near and dear to his heart. The rising star has dreams of traveling to Paris and collaborating with renowned producer Rick Rubin. Because of his captivating aura, his tenor voice, and his hypnotizing R&B and pop vibe, Jafar is surely set to become the influencer of all demographics. As an artist, Jafar wants nothing more than to be remembered as someone who makes moving music through stories that inspire people to be themselves. His rise to the top can very well happen as he's managed by Alex Avant, the son of the godfather of black music Clarence Avant, otherly known as a legendary executive, film producer, and entrepreneur. To know about Jafar means you must also know about the musical icons who came before him, who he grew up with, people he'll be continuing to walk in the footsteps of, like his father, Jermaine, who was born into the ever-famous Jackson family in 1954. Jermaine is not only the father of Jafar, but of other sons, Jermaine Jr., Your Majesty, Jamie, Dante, Jordan, Jeremy, and daughters Autumn and Dawn. Jermaine was a child from a big family of his own, where the Jacksons' kids' parents, Catherine and Joseph, conceived 10 in total. Like his son, Jermaine grew up around musical influences and talent. His skills eventually branded him a member of the hit band Jackson 5, consisting of his late brother Michael alongside siblings Jackie, Tito, and Marlon. Jermaine was originally the band's rhythm guitarist and lead singer, but eventually made the switch to backup vocals and bass. After a rift patch between Jermaine and Michael was privately mended between the two of them, originally starting from a controversial song of Jermaine's that threw open shots at his brother, Jermaine spoke at his brother's 2009 funeral service. Jermaine would even go on to defend Michael from the public on news shows and showed up for his brother in court in light of Michael's child-related trial during his latest years of life. Jermaine is a father of 9 kids, with Jafar being one of his youngest. Now, when we talk about musical icons, we know there's just no one bigger than Michael Jackson himself. Like Jermaine, Michael was a huge success in music and would go on to hit legendary status as the king of pop. But before this untouchable fame, Michael was also a very important addition to the Jackson 5, as he led the group as their main vocalist when he initially joined at the tender age of 5. Back in 1958, Michael was a multifaceted music entertainer who thrived in a chart-topping career both during his time with the Jackson 5 and as a majorly loved soloist. His release of one of the best-selling albums in history came in 1982 under the title Thriller, and dropped other #1 hits from Off the Wall and Bad. Michael was and always will be one of America's best-selling singer-songwriters and dancers. As a child, he was pushed right into fame as the frontrunner and lead vocalist of his family's popular Motown group, and later transitioned into a solo career of astonishing, damn near untouchable success, pumping out #1 hits from every single one of his releases. Towards his final years of life, Michael was hounded with allegations that nearly ruined his entire legacy. He welcomed 3 children named Prince, Paris, and BG Blanket Jackson in his time with us. His passing came and went in 2009 at 50 years of age due to an overdose before the launch of his comeback tour. Despite the death that truly rocked the world, there may just be a new glimmer of hope to bring some of Michael back, and this lies in the palms of none other than his nephew Jafar. If you're excited to see Jafar starring as Michael in the upcoming biopic, leave a like on today's Where Are They Now? Now, let's discuss everything there is to know about Jafar, his role, and how it ties into today's video. The 26-year-old star is moonwalking straight into his uncle's legacy as he portrays the king of pop himself in Lionsgate's highly awaited biopic Michael, produced by The Departed's Graham King and directed by Antoine Fuqua. In a Variety statement, Antoine once said, said, "It's incredibly exciting to watch Jafar bring Michael to life. There was such a spiritual connection when I first met Jafar, who has a natural ability to emulate Michael and such great chemistry with the camera." Originally, Jafar was picked for the part after a worldwide casting search was held. In regards to the part, Graham, whose credits include 2018's Tomb Raider, detailed Jafar's success as clear that he is the only person to take on this role. Graham and Jafar met over 2 years prior, of which Graham described to Variety as being blown away by the way he organically personifies the spirit and personality of Michael. "I am beyond thrilled that he has come on board to portray his uncle and cannot wait for the world to see him on the big screen as Michael Jackson." According to Lionsgate, the anticipated biopic will dive into all aspects of the late artist's life, including his quote, "most iconic performances that led him to become the greatest entertainer of all time." On top of playing out his legacy on big screens, the film will also apparently stay true to all of Michael's controversies as well, according to Deadline. And while no official release date has been set for Michael, the media outlet noted that the initial filming will start this year. So between his personal background and professional past, here is everything else we need to know about Jafar. Jafar Jackson is the son of father Jermaine Jackson and mother Alejandra Geneva Oasiaza, who welcomed the rising young star into the world in July 1996. His parents remained together and married from 1995 to 2003. Since 12 years old, Jafar has taken up singing and dancing, as per Deadline, and has showcased his talents through numerous huge iconic artists' originals. In 2019, Jafar's first single, a music video, was released, showing off his talents in dance and vocals. And despite his time in the spotlight being no stranger to the screen through several family-oriented projects throughout the years, Michael will be Jafar's official acting gig. On top of this, Jafar has received the stamp of approval from MJ's mother Catherine, who knows her son better than any other. That right there is some honor. On the topic, Catherine has explained how much Jafar seems to embody her son in every way, shape, and sense. Further stating to The Hollywood Reporter, "It's so wonderful to see him carry on the Jackson legacy of entertainers and performers." As for Jafar, he uploaded a single photo to his Instagram on January 30th to gush about his casting news, captioning the black and white snap of him striking his uncle's iconic pose, "I'm humbled and honored to bring my Uncle Michael's story to life. To all the fans all over the world, I'll see you soon." In other news, of course, it's a known fact that portraying the singing and dancing icon on screen was never going to be an easy feat. However, Jafar may just step up to the plate and successfully gift fans with the one thing they've been begging for years. Aside from the Lionsgate biopic, tributes for Michael Jackson have already sprouted. MJ's timeless hits have not only inspired impersonators, but several official productions, including the currently on Broadway musical MJ the Musical, which focuses on recreating the drama behind Michael's 1992 Dangerous World Tour, created by Tony Award winner Christopher Wheeldon and Pulitzer Prize winner Lynn Nottage. Las Vegas' Cirque du Soleil show has put on Michael Jackson 1, which depicts Michael's extensive discography as a soundtrack to the lives of 4 misfits on their self-discovery journeys. Whereas Who's Bad? The Michael Jackson Experience is a global touring show which recreates some of MJ's seminal songs and videos from 2003 onwards. Now, getting back to Michael's nephew Jafar, his first single, Got Me Singin', which dropped in 2019, was accompanied by a culturally stunning video shot in Brazil, as touched on briefly earlier. The track is heavily reminiscent of his uncle's former sound, from the definitive Jackson vocals to its staccato Latin beats. Jafar also flexes some nice grooves on the rooftops of the Brazilian establishments. As for the biopic, who was the man behind the plan? Well, the MJ-centric flick is planned to start production this year and has the involved assistance of several Hollywood veterans. Directing the film, as aforementioned, is Antoine, who also directed Will Smith's 2022 movie Emancipation and Denzel Washington's 2001 starring single-season show Training Day. In another Instagram post, Antoine featured an image of Jafar in character as Michael, including the caption, "Proud to announce Jafar Jackson as Michael, the motion picture event that explores the journey of the man who became the king of pop. Coming soon." The screenplay is in the works by John Logan, who was responsible for the writing of Ridley Scott's Oscar-winning Gladiator. John and Graham had previously teamed up on Martin Scorsese's Aviator. I'm sure a question floating in a lot of people's minds is, will the MJ biopic be authorized? Well, if it hasn't already been made clear, yes, the film will definitely be authorized. And though we're not sure how deep they'll be diving into the late singer's various scandals, we do know the project is being overseen and done with the blessing of Michael's estate. Not only will his mom be keeping a sharp eye on what is brought into onto the movie, but so will Michael's longtime legal team, John Branca and John McClane, who also co-execute the late artist's estate. But what are some of the things we could be look at tackling in the biopic despite this? Well, during the early 90s, Michael was thrown into an investigation by the LA Police Department after a young boy accused the late star of inappropriate behavior. After a raid of Michael's Neverland Ranch residence in 2003, authorities detailed MJ on charges related to misconduct and indecency involving a minor. In 2005, Michael, who tirelessly maintained his innocence, was acquitted of all charges. His passing came about 4 years after this, when his doctor gave him too large a dose of anesthetic, initially administered to help Michael sleep. Overall, I am wholeheartedly intrigued by how interesting it will be to see Michael tackle these topics, both applauded and scrutinized, which will play out on the big screens quite soon. And here's to hoping Jafar can branch out and prove he's more than just MJ's relative, because he sure does have the talent for it.
Michael Jackson is one of the best-selling music artists of all time, with estimated sales over 400 million records worldwide. He had 13 Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles, more than any other male artist in the Hot 100 era, and was the first artist to have a top 10 single in the Billboard Hot 100 in 5 different decades. He is regarded by the RIAA as the highest-selling individual music artist of all time worldwide. His honors include 15 Grammy Awards, 6 Brit Awards, a Golden Globe Award, and 39 Guinness World Records, including the most successful entertainer of all time. Jackson has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, the Vocal Group Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, the Dance Hall of Fame, being the only recording artist to do so, and the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. A biopic about the artist was bound to come around eventually, and it's almost more surprising that it hasn't happened before now, but that is largely due to the incredibly controversial nature of Michael's life. According to The Hollywood Reporter, although the exact plot hasn't been confirmed yet, it's expected that Michael will cover everything from Jackson's child stardom in the Jackson 5 to his impactful musical career as an adult, the pop star's tragic 2009 passing, but will also, quote, fairly address the accusations he faced later in life. Now, it's hard to say exactly how the film will touch on those controversies, and it is also entirely possible that the movie will paint over those controversies in a favorable light for Jackson himself. We know this because while the film will be co-produced by Graham King, the Oscar-winning British producer of Martin Scorsese's The Departed, and who most recently worked on the Freddie Mercury biopic Bohemian Rhapsody, Michael will also be co-produced by John Branca and John McClane, both of whom were involved in Jackson's life in different capacities and are the co-executors of Jackson's estate, which has stood against the accusations made against the King of Pop. Branca, an entertainment lawyer, was part of Jackson's management team and instrumental in producing the Thriller short film, and McClane is a music executive who's been associated with acts like Jackson, Lionel Richie, and Janet Jackson. It's also worth noting that Bohemian Rhapsody, which was also co-produced by both Graham King and band members of Queen, caught some flack for also altering history to paint those members of the band in a more favorable light. Now, these kinds of things happen in biopics. Sometimes, and more often, it's to save skin of those involved or to protect the legacy of someone that those involved cared about. Sometimes, it's in order to make a better film story. But if this happens with Michael, not only would it feel incredibly insensitive and make a statement about the seriousness of what happened, but could have pretty heavy repercussions for and from the victims of Jackson's actions and their supporters. Not to mention that it would, as Dan Reed, director of the groundbreaking 2-part 4-hour Leaving Neverland documentary pointed out, glorify a man who had committed some incredibly serious crimes. Leaving Neverland focused on Wade Robson and James Safechuck, 2 former child performers who described, in often excruciating detail, the way Jackson took advantage of them and mistreated them at a young age. That is the only way I can describe what happened without being flagged by YouTube. If you know what I'm referring to, then it's all you need to hear, and if you don't, you can watch Leaving Neverland, but just be prepared because it is quite harrowing. Now, Jackson has denied all the allegations raised against him. He settled a lawsuit in civil court connected to one such case in 1993, and in 2003 he was investigated by the FBI, tried, and found not guilty in 2005. But after Jackson passed away in 2009 at 50 from cardiac arrest caused by prescriptions, the claims continued and clouded his music legacy. The Michael Jackson biopic is set to be directed by the acclaimed Antoine Fuqua, who is most known for his work work on Emancipation with Will Smith, the Equalizer franchise starring Denzel Washington, and the critically acclaimed Training Day. The film's script will be penned by the Oscar-nominated John Logan, who famously worked on Gladiator and the James Bond films Skyfall and Spectre. And then, almost adding to the film being backed by his estate and family, Michael Jackson himself is set to be played by his own nephew, Jafar Jackson, the second youngest son to songwriter, producer, and Jackson 5 member Jermaine Jackson. Michael's mother spoke on the casting of Jafar, saying, quote, "Jafar embodies my son. It's so wonderful to see him carry on the Jackson legacy of entertainers and performance, which, not to be negative, does not give faith that the film will properly cover the damaging controversy surrounding Michael Jackson." The producer, Graham King, said on the casting, quote, "I met Jafar over 2 years ago and was blown away by the way he organically personifies the spirit and personality of Michael. It was something so powerful that even after conducting a worldwide search, it was clear that he is the only person to take on this role. I am beyond thrilled that he has come on board to portray his uncle and cannot wait for the world to see him on the big screen as Michael Jackson." The thing is, Michael Jackson's life was incredibly and undoubtedly impressive, complex, and full of ups and downs. Born in Indiana in 1958, Jackson came to fame alongside his brothers as the youngest member of the Jackson 5, which itself is steeped in controversy. The group of brothers were famously managed by their father, Joe Jackson, who was more infamously known as an incredibly monstrous father. Being a failed musician himself, he pushed his sons with extreme methods and a lack of love, primarily focusing much of his psychological torment on Michael specifically, who was the youngest and most talented of the 5 brothers. There is also the fact that he and his brothers would perform at strip clubs, performing their act in between female strippers, which, as you can imagine, is an interesting introduction into that part of life and the world. Now, MJ began his solo career in 1971 with Motown Records and really became a star in 1979 with his album Off the Wall. In 1982, possibly his greatest album ever, Thriller, came out, eventually becoming the best-selling album of all time. And alongside it, music videos for Beat It, Billie Jean, and Thriller are said to have broken racial barriers and turned music videos themselves into an art form and promotional tool. He was a key figure in the rise and success of MTV. His 1987 album Bad was the first album to produce 5 US Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles. Now, between the 70s and early thousands, Michael Jackson became one of the most enduring and massive pop icons of all time, with a more than 40-year career. But over those 40 years, there were tons of shocking, exciting, strange, and interesting things that happened. The massive Super Bowl halftime show, multiple plastic surgeries, being diagnosed with a skin disorder vitiligo, which I'm sorry if I mispronounced, but results in white patches on the skin and sensitivity to sunlight, the allegations of skin bleaching, and a rivalry between Michael and fellow musician Prince. I mean, there is also Michael Jackson's incredibly unique behavior from the stage to his day-to-day personality. What has always been an interesting topic surrounding Michael Jackson has been his relationships. For starters, as you can imagine, there have been many of them. The late Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Elvis, was his first wife. The two met in 1974 and reconnected in 1992, becoming involved with each other shortly afterwards. She was present for his first set of allegations in 1993, and she supported him during the time that he began to be dependent on pain medications, even convincing MJ to enter into rehab. The two got married on May 26, 1994, but it wasn't an entirely successful marriage, ending in August of 1996. But curiously, the two continued to see each other for about 4 more years after that, on and off. It's curious because in November of 1996, Jackson married Debbie Rowe, the assistant of his dermatologist. From this marriage, Jackson had 2 of his 3 children, his son Michael Joseph Prince Jackson Jr., who was born February 13th, 1997, and his daughter Paris Michael Catherine Jackson, who was born April 3rd, 1998. Unfortunately, the two split in April of 2000, with Jackson taking full custody of the kids. His last child, Prince Michael Jackson, was born from a surrogate mother on February 21st, 2002. In September 2009, author Shmuley Bodiak released a book titled The Michael Jackson Tapes, based on the taped conversations he had with Jackson in 2001, which focused partially on Jackson's thoughts on relationships. When he was asked if he got jealous when his longtime friend Elizabeth Taylor dated other men, Jackson replied, quote, Yes and no. I know that if we ever did anything romantically, the press would be so mean and nasty and call us the odd couple. It would turn into a circus, and that's the pain of it all. It is speculated that Jackson might have dated 9 women throughout his career, apart from Lisa Marie Presley and Debbie Rowe, including former model Tatiana Thumpson and the actress Elizabeth Taylor. Now, more recently, some strange things have happened with Jackson outside of his biopic that is being made, specifically with his music. This month, around 50 gigs of unreleased Michael Jackson songs and videos were stolen and leaked from recording engineer Brad Sundberg's laptop, and it included a large amount of unreleased material from the later 80s and early 90s, around the time of MJ's Bad and Dangerous eras. Sundberg played the unreleased songs and videos for fans who attended his In the Studio with MJ seminar in Brussels. Now, during a break in this seminar, apparently Sundberg's laptop was stolen by a quote lone wolf who apparently jumped out of a window and onto the roof to escape, like a whole full-on heist. In a video shared on social media, Brad said, quote, "We do know who the thief is, and we are working with the police, and we're doing all we can to bring this to some sort of a resolution." While there have been Michael Jackson songs leaked before, the way this one happened made it way more shocking. A music-centered Twitter account called The Leak called it, quote, "one of the wildest music leaks in years." Also, in July of 2022, 3 of Michael Jackson's songs that were released in a posthumous compilation album in 2010 have been removed from streaming services after claims that they had, quote, "faked vocals." Monster, Keep Your Head Up, and Breaking News have been at the center of a court case from fans who say that the vocals are from a session singer and not Michael himself. In response to this, Sony Music and MJ's estate decided to remove the songs from streaming services as the, quote, "simplest and best way to move beyond the conversations associated with these tracks once and for all," which is actually kind of a mature move. I kind of like that. Despite his controversies, Michael Jackson was an enormously successful, multi-dimensional musician that broke boundaries and changed the face of music, performance, pop culture, fashion, and dance. He will forever be an integral part of art history, and we shall see what comes of his upcoming movie, Michael, which is beginning filming this year.